Hi everyone, this is Tabitha Kelly and our kind of guest speaker, Josh King.
Of course.
And today we're going to be talking about raising awareness for mental illness in adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that the biggest impact anyone ever has had on you before?
That's a big question. I'm trying to think, because I feel like there's been, a lot of small moments, or just people genuinely throughout the past, 4 years of my life, which has kind of been, the craziest, most high school. But to think of one big moment would probably be,
How about, inspiration?
I have one. The night, it was me, you, Wyatt, Michael, Alyssa, which are, if you don't know, they're, we were a squad for a little bit. And so we'd always have these, sleepovers at Wyatt's house, where we'd just, make food and play games and just talk and, lay on couches for hours, and it was kind of the best thing ever. And so one night, we were all laying in his guest bed, and there's all five of us squeeze in somehow, and I remember we take this selfie, and the first one is just Wyatt's arm, because Michael couldn't aim, and then the rest of it, I love this photo. This is probably one of my favorite photos ever, and the rest of us is squeezed in this bed, and we're just hugging and talking about our feelings, and then Michael asked me if I'm gay, and it just came out of nowhere. It was just kind of are you gay? And I just sat there, and I was like, yes. And then Wyatt, everyone of course knew at this point, but I remember you were like, are you, really? And I was like, yes. And then everyone cheered and hugged and talked about how excited they were.
It's a big dog pile.
And then I remember you bought brownies for a surprise. You said you were surprising us, and we go downstairs and we just ate brownies and just talked about how I'm gay. And it was the first time I've ever really been comfortable with it. And it was something that was really dark and kind of led towards part of my depression of that time. So that was a huge weight lifted off my shoulder, and it was kind of the start of me sharing things that weren't just surface level with that group, and especially you. And so that was probably one of the most impactful days of my life.
That was a really good day.
It was a fun one.
I think back to that day a lot.
It was a very simple time.
It was, yeah.
Nice time.
There was another impactful day that happened at Wyatt's house,
as most do.
With that group of people, which is probably the most impactful day of my life. Which was, I didn't know you back then at all, and I didn't really know anyone else there either. I knew Wyatt. We were regretfully dating at the time, and I kind of knew Alyssa. I just kind of barely knew anyone, and we got on the topic of depression. And I brought up that I had been depressed in the past, and I had thought about suicide and all of those kinds of things. I've since gotten better, so don't worry about that. But I remember looking over, and it was in a really dark room on the couches, and we were all laying down. I remember looking up, and you were crying, and I was like, I don't even know this kid, and he's crying over me. What is happening? And it was a really good day. I think it did start a lot of friendships. That group really turned into a squad a few times.
We've seen each other at our worst and our best.
Yeah.
And I remember that was I feel like it was one of the first times I've ever really talked about stuff like that. Because for the most part, whenever people make jokes I'm depressed, haha, I want to kill myself, you kind of it hits you a tiny bit, but you feel like you just have to laugh it off. Because if you really sit down and someone's I want to kill myself, haha, and you're like, what's wrong? I feel like that just loses connection with them.
Right.
And I remember that was the first time I was I know this is real. And I just met you, but you made such a quick impact on I just felt like a connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thought of you going through that pain, or even feeling that, and then not only me kind of realizing kind of what I was going through, similar things, and it was kind of the first time I've thought about having I feel like if you never really talk about it, you can't be that can't be me kind of thing.
Right.
And so not only was that my first impact of seeing someone else do that, but it was the first realization that I might be sharing similar emotions or thoughts.
Right. That's always hard to do in high school, I feel like, because everyone does make jokes about it, and everyone is so, quote unquote open about it. But when you actually sit down and have a serious conversation, it's more real.
Yeah.
It's less high school problems, it's more real life.
and depression's kind of like suicide kind of thing. It's really scary and weird that we live in a society where a lot of people just joke about it or kind of brag about being depressed or like wanting, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
asking for attention.
Which is really, and then there's a lot of people who feel that way but are too scared to say anything, or there's such a bad stigma about it. Like it's either a really bad stigma where people think you're lazy and awful, or people think it's like funny and will get you attention.
Glorified.
Like, yeah, exactly, and it makes it really hard to.
And well, I mean, with new TV shows coming out too, I read an article about what is it, 13 Reasons Why, that glorifies suicide.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. That's why. Right,
and there's no trigger warnings on it or anything, but there definitely should be. I read a whole article on it, and that kind of brings me to my next point is, like, how can we prevent suicide at all in teenagers if nobody's talking about it and it's being glorified and everything else? For me, I think that really raising awareness is gonna help, because as soon as you can start seeing the warning signs, you can actually have that serious conversation with somebody instead of just joking about it.
I feel like kind of taking some of the stigmas away from actually being depressed, or like just societal views on that, along with societal views on getting therapy, because most people think getting therapy is for people who have problems, when a lot of the times anyone can benefit from therapy, no matter what. It's just that kind of like asking for help doesn't mean you're wrong or you're less than someone.
Yeah, it actually means, like, to me, I think that's like a very strong thing to do, to admit that you need help and to seek it out. I admire that in
I
people.
do as well. And just, I feel like, obviously it's really hard, but I think just having a good support system is a big thing. Just knowing that no matter what, no matter how you feel or you're at lowest, you always have something to go to, because it's really scary if you're lost yourself and you have no one to help guide you at all. And that kind of goes with role models. Like, I know a big thing is for minorities or anyone, like seeing someone succeed from a point of disadvantage and seeing them get out of it and do good things can kind of inspire you or show that there's a way. Because a lot of these people, it's like this spiral, and they feel like there's no escape. Or if they do escape, they're just going to continue this like lull for the rest of their life. And I see why people would kill themselves if they think the rest of their life is going to be as awful as like how they feel right now.
Right, not getting through it and just not realizing that this is your low and thinking that this is the highest you're going to get, and then that's it. And
I feel like in the news or like TV shows, we shouldn't just see people kill themselves and then like the whole school mourns. There should be more things like this person, that's kind of weird too, but like...
Well, okay, so... bringing in another TV show in Stranger Things, the boy went missing, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But his brother put up flyers, and he was looking for him and everything else, and nobody really said anything. And I think that was more of a realistic point of view of like everyone kind of talks about it and everyone whispers about it, but nobody actually mourns, you know, because they didn't know you and they don't have a reason to. I mean, they have a reason to because obviously you're a good person, but they don't know how. I think it's just too real for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird with boundaries. Like, you're not really supposed to like let random people take responsibility for a lot of your emotions, but at the same time you shouldn't be afraid to share, and a good person wouldn't just let someone, like, it's a weird balance to kind of know.
No, for sure. So another way to help people is if you are studying psychology and things like that, and you have access, or everyone has access to the DSM. But if you have it like in a physical copy, you can bring it with you and things like that to help diagnose disorders. And that way, if somebody is really worried about something, you can help them look up treatment options and severity of it, maybe to calm them down. And really just tell if it's a real problem or not. Like, keeping everyone anonymous. I did have somebody come up to me and tell me that they thought they had an eating disorder, which are usually characterized as, like, anorexia or bulimia and trying to make yourself thinner. But in this particular case, they ate so much and just so consistently that they had always had weight problems. Throughout their entire life, they had been put on diets from, like, I think 2nd grade. They'd been on a diet and nothing was working. And she came to me and she said, you know, I think I figured it out. I read a lot of articles and I've started treatment on myself, and I think that I have the binge eating disorder. And I had never heard of it. And I was like, I don't know if that's a real thing, you know, like, you shouldn't go throwing away disorders, you know, you don't want to throw that around. And I opened the DSM, and sure enough, it was there. And we helped talk about how severe it was, and I told her about treatment options, but she had already kind of started on her own of, like, home remedies, playing things during her sleep, saying, like, you're not hungry, you know, things like that. She made sure to listen to it before so that it didn't affect her negatively, but so she had been trying sleep hypnosis and aromatherapy and things like that, and it had actually been helping her. So in some cases, I think the DSM is really helpful, and you can help people find treatment options, and in other cases, they find some that work for themselves. But either way, I think that it's a really good tool for anyone.
And I think a biggest tool is just eat, sleep, and...
For sure. Support system.
Exactly. And it's, like, really basic, and it's really, like, I guess cliche in a way, but really if your body's at its best, it makes it much easier to go through some of the stuff.
Right.
Because how do you expect to even handle anything if your body's lacking in nutrition or sleep? I think that's very, like, you can tell when you're not at your best.
Yeah. And I think that raising awareness for it is another thing. You're not just like, oh, I've been really tired recently, and I haven't really wanted to do anything, and everything seems so distant, and things like that, instead of just thinking, wow, I'm in the rut. You can kind of realize, maybe I do have a problem, maybe I do need to talk to someone about this. And I think that knowing those warning signs and the early stages of it and catching it sooner can keep it from festering and turning into this huge problem.
And a big thing that helped me, I kind of do, is I started, like, giving myself, like, daily routines or things, and, like, running in the morning, or eating oatmeal instead of, like, waffles or something like that, or I would, like, research something new every day, or, like, read a book a certain amount of time every day, because, like, no matter what I did or how I felt, I knew I was being some sort of productive, and I was just keeping myself going no matter what I do. So it can't be like, I'm so lazy, I'm so awful, I'm never gonna get, like, I just could...
Working on self-improvement instead of loathing. Yeah, that can actually really help, just keeping yourself busy. Well, not busy,
but just active.
You know?
And sunlight helps. Sunlight's a help.
Yeah.
Vitamin D.
For sure. Also, of course, raising awareness, suicide hotline, making sure everyone knows where that is if you do have a major problem. You know, there are plenty of things that we can do, but I feel like our society doesn't do nearly enough in raising awareness or helping at all.
Which I understand, but it's too, like, I get it's such a taboo topic, and it's really scary, so I understand why we've kind of formed those walls, but we have to make some sort of change. For sure.
I'd like to kind of switch topics a little bit, and I was wondering if you'd tell us a little bit about how you've channeled any of these emotions, keeping busy, improving yourself, things like that, into the art that you've done.
Well, I did a lot of acting before, and I loved it, and then I stopped once I hit high school because of that, like, fear of being gay, fear of being in theater, fear of not being good enough, all of that mixed together, so I stopped. And then junior year, it got really worse. I was, like, extremely depressed, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had nothing. And so then I reached out to Rachel Koski, the director, and was like, can I be in your advanced class? Because I don't want to be in a class with freshmen. She goes, why not? So I started, and it was kind of crazy how fast, like, that passion or just the thing I love, like, sparked something new in me, and it gave me something to think about at night for hours. And it's just like a release. Like, my favorite thing in the world is improv, because you just let go everything within, like, a minute. And it's a scene that you don't come up with, and it can be with a partner or it's by yourself. And so you can quickly be someone who's mad at their wife, or someone who's happy about receiving a gift in the mail, or someone who's looking for an apple. Like, there's just so many different things, and you can use all these personal experiences to really just like, you're not thinking of it, but you're almost reliving your life, and it's therapeutic in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think that having an outlet really does help tons of people. I think that that's one of the most important things that we can do.
And it's just leaving a mark. I feel like art is this way to, like, summarize parts of your life or emotions you've gone through and, like, leave a mark on the earth. So, like, you can look back and be like, we did the Addams Family musical, and like 1,000 people watched it, and every time people talk about it, they're like, I really enjoyed that. That was one of the best shows I've ever seen. And that's something we shared with them, and they couldn't have got that from anything else if we weren't, like...
Right, especially because every show is different, and everyone brings something different to every show, so you can never really know what you're going to get out of a show until you go see it, or be a part of it, or anything else. For me personally, art has helped me a lot. Just knowing that there are people there who share something with me, that they appreciate what I do and I appreciate what they do, and it's just a simple human connection. I think that's really nice. I would like to thank you,
of course,
for everything that you've done for me, because you are one of the most impactful people in my life.
You as well.
And I remember one time I had the worst week of my life. My parents had yelled at me and grounded me and everything else, and I was failing my classes, and I was at the worst. My boyfriend was fighting with me, you know, like, it was my rock bottom. And I remember I asked you if I could go home with you that day, and you were like, well, I'll give you a ride home, you know? And I was like, okay, awesome, I get to talk to Josh, that's the best thing ever. And we got in the car, and immediately I started crying and just screaming about my problems and everything that was wrong. And you just kind of, like, helped me. You just talked to me calmly, and you were like, yeah, well, that's life. That sucks, and, like, you don't deserve it. And just having you be so calm around me while I'm actually
Was that the night we got Whataburger?
Yeah.
So we went to the park?
Yeah. Me just screaming and you being so calm and just helping me is just super impactful in my life. And then I remember switching topics and just being like, oh, and this.
Oh, I remember that. I just forgot about that. Yeah. You were right. Looking back on it, you were right. I made some bad choices, but that's the funny thing. Tabitha's always right. If you're listening to this podcast, she's always right. No matter how much you don't want her to be at some point.
Well, we did talk a lot about it, so that was a joint effort, for sure. Just talking about life in general, I think, and having a support system as awesome as you,
like, to think if we didn't have each other through some of these times,
it would have been awful. But I think that it really has helped, and also just telling you everything gets a weight off of my shoulders, I feel like, and just also, I feel like in a small way, it's kind of raising awareness for it, because I tell you what's going on, you tell somebody else that you're maybe having problems, and we open up to each other, and then we raise awareness for all of it, and hopefully that helps at least one person. If we help at least one person, then we've done more than I think is ever possible. You know, like,
if you can change one person's life, like, then they can change someone else's.
Right, like, how can I do that much? How is that even possible? How can I change someone's life? But hopefully, I've made an impact on somebody somewhere. And
it's like that thing at Starbucks where people do that thing where they pay for the person behind them.
Yeah, paying it forward.
One time, they did that to me, and of course, I just paid for the person behind me, because I was like, why not? And I later asked that person, I'm like, how long has this gone on? Like, what's the max that this has happened? They're like, when I was here, it happened 45 times in a row.
Yeah.
And to think that could happen with, like, getting help or telling people or spreading awareness is crazy. Like,
right, just starting that chain reaction.
Like, this as simple as paying $7 for someone else.
Right.
It could be as easy as just opening up a little bit.
Right, and just sharing personal accounts and
just buy that personal latte.
Yeah, buy a latte and save a life.
Yep, that's how it works.
So we're running out of time. I'd just like to say thank you again for helping me with this and everything else in the past and joining me.
It's fun. I love a podcast.
So yeah, again, thank you, and that is going to conclude this podcast.
Thank you so much. Done.